we're in the midst of a very, very unique time in the UFC, a time where we are experiencing a 1-month gap in between cards. Now, the only benefit of this is the fact that we're going from pay-per-view to pay-per-view. All right, that is our one silver lining here. But for me, there's only one fight to look forward to at UFC 304. There's one fight that just stands above the rest. It is the most fascinating fight, I think, of the entire year because, my God, it just is. Paddy Pimblett versus Bobby Green. And the reason for that is you've got Bobby Green, who he's a veteran, he's been around forever, very, very skillful striker, amazing head movement, good counters, very, very fast, but he is slightly on the decline. I mean, for sure. And for me, going back and comparing some of his older fights to some of his more recent fights, the big issue for me is I think Bobby Green's reaction time, it's just a little bit slower than it used to be. And when you look at his style, which is 100% using head movement in the pocket to slip and find counters, that's going to be a problem. Because if you get tagged at all, you're going to get hurt because you're leaving yourself very, very open. Now, in the past, you look at his fight with Fiziev is a great example. That fight took place 2 years and 11 months ago exactly. And Fiziev is a super, super dangerous, fast, powerful striker. And Bobby Green was just hanging in there with him. His head movement was amazing. His defense was really good. He landed some good shots of his own. But since then, he's just not quite to that level. But, you know, his skill in striking is still there. His speed, I think, is still there. So it's a very interesting fight when you parallel that with Paddy Pimblett, who is just horrible. I mean, Paddy Pimblett, you have to make him the favorite in this matchup. You just do. But he's a really, really bad fighter. Paddy Pimblett is terrible. He's just not good. Now, he made his professional debut all the way back in 2012. He has been a professional fighter for 14 years. You could have fucking fooled me, because what has he been doing these past 14 years in terms of training? Where, what, how, who was taught this guy striking? It's abysmal. It is absolutely abysmal because you have a guy in Paddy who is a very good athlete. He's got a good, strong build. He hits clearly very hard. He throws kicks very well. But as far as distance management, footwork, reading his opponent's punches, setting up his own shots, there's none of that. Absolutely none of it. Now, I've said this before, and I still maintain it because Paddy has made absolutely zero improvement since he got to the UFC. But I've always said, Paddy strikes like all he does for training is hitting the heavy bag. That's it. Because he just recklessly goes at you. He just throws with everything he has. He leaves his chin way up in the air. His hooks are terrible. His defense is terrible. In the fight with Tony Ferguson, and let me remind you, Tony Ferguson at this point is a animated corpse being dragged around by he is a decaying corpse being dragged around by just a fleeting consciousness at this point. He has zero power. His durability is completely gone. No speed. He's very frail. And he was tagging Paddy like over and over and over again. And look, Paddy landed some of his own good shots too. He actually had Tony really hurt. But, I mean, Paddy is in the prime of his life at 28 years old, fighting a old, withered, weathered Tony, and he was getting his face boxed off. I mean, he was getting tagged over and over and over and over and over again. Now, I mean, the one thing that really saved Paddy in this matchup is the fact that a lot of it took place on the ground in the grappling. And the reason why I say it saved him, because I understand Paddy did have him hurt in the first round, but Paddy being on top the entire first and second round, he gassed out horribly at the start of the third. I mean, he was just sitting in Tony's full guard, landing some ground and pound, and it completely gassed him out. He was legitimately in trouble at the start of that third round. He was very, very tired. And the one thing that saved him was he hit the first traditional takedown I've seen since he's got to the UFC. But the other two times that ended up on the ground during that fight, it was not because Paddy took him down. It was because Tony slipped while throwing kicks. No, Paddy did try to shoot some takedowns in this fight, and it was really bad. It was bad shots out in the open, not set up well at all. But like I mentioned prior, it's so interesting because Paddy Pimblett's A game is the grappling. I mean, he's got very, very good jiu-jitsu. And back during his Cage Warriors days, this is what he was always looking to do. He was hitting traditional single leg, double leg, he's trying to get the fight to the ground where he would have a massive advantage. But ever since he's got to the UFC, whenever he ends up on the ground, it's because he's getting taken down pretty much. It's because he's getting picked up in the air by Jordan Levitt and slammed. And Paddy off his back, he's got nothing. He's got nothing at all. So when you look at this fight with Bobby Green, like I said, of course you have to make Paddy the favorite. Way younger, way stronger, way bigger. He's going to be better on the ground, but the gap between them when it comes to the striking is going to be astronomical. I mean, Bobby Green is genuinely very, very, very skillful. And Paddy Pimblett is the complete opposite. Now, I feel like I could build a good game plan for Paddy, and that would be, for one, you cannot box with Bobby Green. Just don't do it. You got to throw a lot of kicks. Like I said, I think Paddy, the way he throws his kicks are very, very good. And because Bobby is constantly looking for head movement, it opens up the kicks a lot. I mean, Bobby is almost baiting you to throw at his head because he has his hands down, he's leaving his face open, but I mean, that is what he wants you to do. He wants to slip and counter. So the leg kicks, the body kicks, man, I think that's got to be the key for him in this matchup. The more Paddy is boxing with Bobby Green, the worse it's going to be for him. Bobby Green's going to see all of his labored lunging shots. He's going to slip, and he's going to be countering Paddy all day long. But even then, if Paddy just throws a leg kick with no setup, very telegraphed, Green's going to step in and crack him. Now, as I said, Green being a lot smaller, Paddy's going to have a huge power advantage. But even then, like, you look at Jim Miller, for example, which was Bobby Green's last fight. Jim Miller is a way more technical striker than Paddy Pimblett. Way more technical. Now, on the ground, it's not nearly as close, but like Paddy Pimblett just doesn't. First of all, his ability to close the distance, to set up good takedowns, I haven't seen it in the UFC. In Cage Warriors, it seemed like it was a little better. In the UFC, I have not seen a wink of it. Not even close. He really, really needs to try to get this fight to the ground. I think that's really his only chance of having success, because on the feet, like I said, it's so fascinating because Bobby Green, he's chinny, he's getting old. If Paddy lands once, he's going to be in trouble. But good luck landing on Bobby Green with the skill set of Paddy Pimblett. And I just go back and forth on this fight all day. I mean, Paddy Pimblett is at such a skill disadvantage here, but he's got so much more youth and strength and size, and just, he's got every physical attribute to almost every single technical detriment on the feet, Now, I understand maybe some of you guys are still holding out on the possibility that Paddy comes into this fight with a lot of improvements made to his game. Well, I'm personally not, because that's how I felt during his last fight. He fought Jared Gordon. People thought he was going to win that fight pretty handedly. He didn't. He lost that fight. The entire internet turned on him. He became a laughingstock. Paddy took a long break off from fighting. He got surgery, healed up from some injuries. And I thought, okay, maybe Paddy really realizes now that he needs to make serious improvements to his game. He's got no other choice than to buckle down, go to a real kickboxing or Muay Thai gym, dedicate himself there for a solid 6 months, just really get attuned to actual striking. And then he went to that Tony Ferguson fight and, like I said, got his face boxed off. Had no defense. Threw every single shot telegraphed. He just couldn't do it, man. He couldn't do it. And it drives me crazy. What has he been doing the last 14 years? What has he been doing the last 14 years? Does anybody hold pads for him? Who's holding pads for him? Like, what striking coach is like, oh yeah, that's a real good. That's a real good hook. That's a real good lunging, out of place, chin up in the air hook. Who? I don't know, man. I don't know. I wish I could give you an answer to why I think Paddy Pimblett is so underdeveloped in so many areas of the fight game. At the end of the day, it's got to come down to his coach. I don't know who his coach is. I don't know if he's been with this guy for a long time, but this guy's failing him. Paddy Pimblett, he's been failed. He's been completely and utterly failed. If I was Paddy Pimblett, I would genuinely think about suing my coach. Now, I don't think there's actually any legal grounds here, but I just feel like he's been taken advantage of big time. That's what I think. I think Paddy Pimblett is so goddamn abysmal. I think Paddy Pimblett, he's just not good in any sense of the word. He's not good in any sense of the word, other than the ground game, which he has not developed good takedowns for. He just hasn't. I mean, not to the level of like the tip top of the UFC. Could you imagine Paddy Pimblett trying to fight Jalen Turner? Can you imagine the bloodbath that would be? The absolute bloodbath. Imagine him fighting Justin Gaethje or Dustin Poirier, Islam Makhachev. You can't. There's no point. I mean, why is Paddy even in the UFC if he knows he's going to have to face these guys at some point? Like, I just don't know. I don't know. I mean, I said during my last breakdown for Paddy Pimblett that I think he needs to get a couple wins, fight out whatever contract he has, and I'm running for the PFL. I am running for the PFL. I'm starting some beef with Dana or something, just kind of make it seem like it's not my fault I have to leave, but I'm leaving because of outside stuff. I'm going to the PFL. That's where Paddy has a chance to win. It's not in the UFC. The UFC is the last place Paddy Pimblett should be at, unless this was the plan all along for Paddy. You know what I mean? Go to the UFC, kind of build up a bit of a name for himself, but he must know his skills just are not up to par. You know, it's not like Paddy's 25 years old. All right, he's 28, turning 29 very, very soon. You can definitely make some incremental improvements. But the gap between Paddy Pimblett and the top of the division is astronomical. Like, it's just not close. It's not close at all. And I really don't know what's going to happen in this fight with Bobby Green. I mean, I don't know, because Bobby Green is so much of a better striker. So much of a better striker. But Paddy has every physical advantage. But it's just not comparable on the feet, you know? It's just not comparable. And, you know, I guess that's all I got to say. That's all I got to say is I am so fascinated by Bobby Green and Paddy Pimblett. I just am. I really, really am.